Freedom of media, its political concept. The press freedom plays a vital role upon the situation or status of politics in the Philippines. Looking back, the history of the country is highly influenced with press freedom, practically during the time of revolution. Today we will discuss about the freedom of media of our country in different period to start with the initial pages of the Philippine press. Del Superior Gobierno is the first established Philippine newspaper year 1811 by the Spanish governor whose content is the news from Spain and intended readers are the Spanish local. La Esperanza is established year 1846. It is the first daily newspaper of the country. Its content is dealing with non-controversial subjects such as science, religion, and history. The best edited newspaper is Diario de Manila. After 38 years of publication, it was suppressed by the Governor-General, allegedly for inciting the Filipinos to rebel against Spaniards. El Ilocano is the first local publication started 1893, while El Hogar is the first publication for and by women established at the same year. Its history can be forced back from the nationalistic newspaper established in Europe in the Philippines during the Spanish colonial rules. Its aim is to increase consciousness with respect to the oppressive condition prevailing in the country then. It was mainly published and written by the Ilustrados. La Solidaridad is established in Spain and first appeared in 1898. It is the fortnightly organ of the propaganda movement and is considered the mouthpiece of the revolution to work peacefully for social and economic reforms, to expose the real plight of the Philippines, and to champion liberalism and democracy. It is indicated policy. Other newspapers which is advocated to political reforms includes Kalayaan year 1898. It served as the official organ of the revolutionaries. La Independencia year 1898 was the most widely read newspaper of the revolution. Other newspapers like La Libertad and El Heraldo de Iloilo are also some examples. The early Filipinos used the power of pen to prove feasibility of using nonviolent strategies for social and political reforms to continue. The Manila Times year 1898, the Bounding Billow and Official Gazette 1898, Manila Daily Bulletin 1900s, and the Filipino Free Press 1908 are newspapers published by mostly American journalists to replace the one that existed. Some of these publications still exist in the current time.
Good day, I am Mary Chops Pelosas and I will discuss the legal framework case of media in the Philippines. Legal framework is one of the subtopics that has greatly affected the press freedom here in Philippines. The 1987 Constitution of the Philippines, Article Number 3, is a law that protects the media and the freedom of speech in the Philippines. But in reality, the Philippines law lack legal frameworks to protect the journalists and for them to work freely. We can take an example of the editor and journalist of Rappler, Maria Risa's case, in which she is sentenced for decades of imprisonment for defamation of allegedly blowing the criminal activity of a prominent businessman and the judicial killing here in Philippines. Jess Malabanan, an infamous journalist covering drug war in Philippines, was also shot dead on his home. Filipino journalist Frenchie May Cumpiao was a 23-year-old editor for a Tacloban City publication in Central Philippines, has been in jail for nearly 2 years over firearms allegations, which she denies, and was also red tagged as a member of a designated terrorist organizations. And sadly, some news stations were charged and harassed of taxation and media ownership with ulterior motives. There's still a lot of killings and imprisonment of journalists all over the Philippines, and most cases were known journalists from the province. Unfortunately, government were increasingly using the rule of the law to silence the legitimate works of a journalist. Some upright journalists who only see the truth were red tagged, accused of terrorism, and jailed for defamation. The legitimate works of a journalist were to unveil the anomalies of the government, but sadly, they were silenced for the benefit of the perpetrators. There is a lack of protection for a journalist who only do their job accordingly. The 1987 Constitution should protect the human rights of its citizens, especially the journalists. But why it was used as a weapon to silence the messengers of the truth?
Hello everyone, I am Jenlifi R. Ulasiman, a Group 5 member. Today I am going to discuss the subtopic that assigned for me, which is the economic context. Okay, but we will define first, what is an economic context? An economic context can be shaped actively by the city and influences businesses to make investments or create jobs. It influences a city's economic structure and its attractiveness as a location. Next that we will tackle about is the issue of economic context under the freedom of media. Mainstream media like JMA, ABS-CBN, DZMM, including newspaper, etc., has recently reached even greater levels of concentration than in the past. On July 10, 2020, the House Committee on Legislative Franchises rejected ABS-CBN's for bid a new 25-year franchise due to several issues, including the dual citizenship of ABS-CBN Chairman Emeritus Eugenio Lopez III, the possible violation of the constitutional limits of foreign ownership, reported labor and tax. What do you think the law does ABS-CBN violated? It was shown that ABS-CBN violated the terms of its legislative franchises by encrypting its various digital subchannels, which led the public purchase ABS-CBN TV Plus boxes. So, what will be the situation of ABS-CBN now? On October 6, 2020, ABS-CBN Corporation announced that they will air its shows and movies back on free TV via the new A to Z channel starting October 10, 2020. It is a block time agreement between the media conglomerate and ZOE Broadcasting Network. The internet and social media offer a space where many independent media can work freely, but their economic viability is uncertain. As what I observed when ABS-CBN shut down, a lot of people lost their jobs and choose to return their respective provinces, staying for good, because ABS-CBN is one of the big networks in our country with more workers. In this case, the number of unemployed Filipinos is increasing, which is the one that is depressing our economy. That's the end of my part for this group reporting, and my group mates will be followed. Thank you for your listening.
Good day! I am Julinda Impingol, and I am going to discuss the socio-cultural context, one of the subtopics under freedom of media. But before anything else, let us define first, what is socio-cultural context? It refers to the idea that language, rather than existing in isolation, is closely linked to the culture and society in which it is used. This means when language is learned, sociocultural context in which it is used needs to be taken into consideration as well. In other words, language is closely linked to the culture and society in which it is used, and it has to be taken into consideration. That is why it is important for us to pick the right words to say, because the language we used can give an impact to many people or in society. So, here are some issues in freedom of media under its subtopic socio-cultural context. Example, journalists who wanted to cover President Duterte's expeditious war on drugs campaign paid the price, learning that the man nicknamed the Punisher does not tolerate criticism. Journalists have also seen the return of red tagging, a practice inherited from the colonial era and the Cold War. It refers to the malicious blacklisting of individuals or organizations critical or not fully supportive of the actions of a sitting government administration in the country, whereby journalists who do not toe the government line are branded as subversive elements or Reds, which amounts to pointing them out to law enforcement as legitimate targets for arbitrary arrest or worst, a summary execution. I have a great example about red tagging and its arbitrary arrest. So, example, the case filed against the leading online media organization Rappler and its CEO Maria Ressa made global headlines. Duterte criticized Rappler for being peddler of fake news, and its license was revoked in 2018, and in June 2020, Ressa and former Rappler journalist Reynaldo Santos Jr. were convicted of cyber libel. Another issue is about the network ABS-CBN's closure in 1972, ordered by the late President Ferdinand Marcos, and in 2019, Duterte said that ABS-CBN would be out when its franchise expired. In a House of Representatives vote in July 2020, the broadcast network was shut down. Press freedom and human rights defenders continue to denounce the prevailing culture of impunity that the government claims ended under the administration of Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. Candidates are expected to mouth the usual rhetoric about preserving democracy, including the importance of a vibrant press. As might be expected, Duterte and his supporters have denied media repression. They claim that ABS-CBN's shutdown and Rappler's legal woes are isolated cases that do not affect other news media organizations in the country. Government agencies argue that their officials are merely expressing their personal opinions and not official policy. Under the Duterte administration, news media organizations and journalists have been red-tagged or accused of being communist sympathizers, and at least 2 journalists have been arrested and detained. The prevailing climate of media repression sends a chilling message to journalists and media workers in the country that they should toe the administration line.
Hello everyone. First of all, let me introduce my name. I am Ronelyn E. Plaza from Bachelor of Science Education, major in Science. Today, I will discuss my topic, which is all about the safety when it comes to freedom of media. The Philippines is one of the world's deadliest countries for journalists, as seen most shockingly when 32 reporters were massacred in the southern province of Maguindanao in 2009, and impunity for these crimes is almost total. In an attempt to address this issue, the government set up a presidential task force on media security in 2016, but this interministerial body has proved to unable to stem the vicious cycle of violence against journalists. At the regional level, many journalists are the target of threats and lawsuits, while women journalists are subjected to specific gender-based threats, such as threats of rape, cyber harassment, disclosure of personal details, and so on. In recent years, the Office of United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, or the OHCHR, has observed a rise in the scale of number of attacks against the physical safety of journalists and media workers, as well as of incidents affecting their ability to exercise freedom of expression, including threats of prosecution, arrest, imprisonment, denial of journalistic access, and failure to investigate and prosecute crimes against them. The works of OHCHR is mandated to promote and protect the effective enjoyment by all of all human rights. OHCHR's works on these issues includes the following. First, implementing General Assembly and Human Rights Council mandates on the safety of journalists. Second, implementing, jointly with the UNESCO and via a wide consultation process of the UN Plan of Action. Third, monitoring and reporting on violations. Fourth, raising awareness through public statements and letters, including on individual cases and on media. Fifth, providing technical advice through OHCHR country and regional presences. And last but not the least, engaging with relevant Human Rights Council special procedure mandates and human rights treaty bodies on the safety of journalists and media freedom. That is all my topic all about, and I hope you learned something. Thank you.